Welcome! In this explainer, we're diving into a pretty radical idea from our source material. What if the word church didn't originally mean a place of worship? What if it actually meant a form of government? Let's get into it. All right, so let's just jump right in and challenge a really big assumption. What if the word church didn't just mean a building or some religious group, but an actual form of government, one designed specifically for a free people? No, that's a pretty wild claim, I know. So let's see what kind of evidence our source lays out for this. The whole core of this idea really comes from this one verse in the book of Acts. It talks about the church in the wilderness. And what's so striking about this is the timeline. I mean, this puts the whole idea of a church way back in the time of Moses, centuries before Christianity even existed as we know it. So what on earth was this church? Well, according to the source material we're looking at, this church in the wilderness wasn't a religious organization. It was the actual government of the Israelites. You see, the original Greek word here, ekklesia, literally means the called out ones. The idea is that they were being called out of bondage to create a totally different kind of society. So how did this all happen? Well, our source breaks it down into this really pivotal three-step story. First, you've got the betrayal. The Israelites build the golden calf, basically turning right back to the systems of bondage they had just escaped. Then you have the call-out. Moses literally draws a line in the sand and asks who is truly on the Lord's side. And finally, the appointment. The Levites step forward, they separate themselves, and they're appointed to serve the entire nation. And this is a really crucial point. Their job wasn't just ceremonial. The source makes it super clear that the Levites were basically the public servants for a national government. They weren't just priests. They were the administrators, the judges, the teachers. They were providing the real political and social framework for the people. And when you look at this government the Levites were running, it had some pretty incredible characteristics. It was designed for a free nation, and it operated under what the Bible calls the perfect law of liberty. And listen to this is a key detail. It was funded entirely by voluntary contributions, free will offerings, not forced taxes. In fact, the source material we're looking at argues that this structure, well, it made it one of the earliest pure republics in all of recorded history. How about that? Okay, so all of this brings us to a really critical question. Was this just a one-time thing, an anomaly out there in the desert? Or was this model of a called-out government actually repeated? And the central argument of our source is a big, loud yes. This model absolutely was repeated. The idea is that Jesus, centuries later, did something that was, well, remarkably similar. Just like Moses, he called out his followers to form their own distinct government, one that was totally separate from the worldly systems that relied on force and authority. And look, this isn't just some modern take on things. We've got this quote here from Jerome, a church father from way back in the 4th century, and he saw the exact same connection. He straight up said that the bishops, presbyters, and deacons of the Christian church held the same positions as the Levites did in that original wilderness government. Okay, this table really lays out the parallels side by side, making it super clear. You got Moses calling out the people in the wilderness, Jesus calling out his followers. The Levites ministered a republic, Jesus' apostles were appointed a kingdom. But check out the system of support. For both, it was funded entirely by voluntary giving, not by taxes. That right there is the crucial thread connecting these two. So you might be asking, what was the main day-to-day job of this kind of government? Well, the source points to one absolutely essential service: social welfare. Taking care of the needy, the widows, the orphans in their community, all through a system of pure charity. And what this did was create this really stark choice between two completely different ways of handling social welfare. On one side, you've got the church's way, pure, unadulterated charity, funded by voluntary giving. And on the other side, you have the world's way, systems built on force and coercive taxes, often run by rulers who called themselves benefactors, even while they were exercising authority over everyone. And just to make this contrast even sharper, the source brings up the Corban of the Pharisees. Now, this might have looked like charity on the surface, but it was really a state-run welfare system under Herod. It was funded by taxes that, according to the Gospels, completely destroyed the true spirit of giving. It was the exact opposite of what the early church was doing. So the takeaway here, the big point, is this. According to the source, the church that Christ established was meant to be a complete form of government. Its whole purpose was to let people live as free souls under God, taking care of each other through love and charity without ever having to rely on these coercive worldly powers. And, this isn't just some theological idea. There's some real historical weight to it. For instance, the famous historian Edward Gibbon, in his masterpiece, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, actually described the early church as a viable republic that existed right inside the Roman Empire itself. That really adds another layer to this whole concept. And that leaves us with a final question for you to chew on. Does this ancient model of a government, one that's based entirely on liberty, voluntary support, and charity, does it challenge how we think today about the proper roles of religion and the state? It's definitely a powerful idea to think about. Hey, if this deep dive gave you something new to think about, we'd love it if you could hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe share it with someone you think would find it interesting. And definitely drop a comment below. We really do want to hear your thoughts on this. Your engagement honestly helps us create more of these explainers. And listen, if you want to go even deeper into all these ideas, you can join the Living Network that's mentioned in our source material over at preparingyou.com. The link for that is right down in the description. Thanks so much for watching.